Have you ever driven faster than the posted speed limit? Have you ever gotten caught picking your nose in public? Did you ever have a taste of beer, wine, or hard liquor before you reached the drinking age? Did you pierce something, like your lip, eyebrow, or belly button, that your grandmother wouldn't have wanted you to pierce? Have you ever stolen something from your workplace, like a pen, pencil, or even a packet of Post-it notes? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you're the embodiment of what we seek to understand in this unit. You are a deviant. Remember this as you learn about this topic of deviance. Deviance is a behavior, trait, or belief that departs from a norm and generates a negative reaction in a particular group. The norms and the group reactions are necessary for a behavior or characteristic to be defined as deviant. The importance of norms becomes clear when we remember that what is deviant in one culture might be normal in another. Even within the same culture, what was deviant a century ago, like marijuana use, might be perfectly acceptable now, and vice versa. The importance of group reactions is clear when we look at the varied reactions that norm violations generate. Some violations are seen as only mildly deviant, like chewing with your mouth open, while others are so strongly taboo that they are almost unthinkable, like cannibalism. Deviant behavior must be sufficiently serious or unusual to spark a negative sanction or punishment. For example, if you were having dinner with friends and used the wrong fork for your salad, you would be violating a minor norm. But your friends probably wouldn't notice or wouldn't react in a negative fashion. They might not even notice. On the other hand, if you ate an entire steak dinner, meat, mashed potatoes, and salad with your hands, your friends probably would react, and they might criticize your behavior strongly. Ugh, it's totally disgusting. And even possibly refuse to eat with you again. This latter example, then, would be considered deviant behavior among your group of friends, and among most groups in American society. Because definitions of deviance are constructed from cultural, historical, and situational norms, sociologists are interested in a number of topics under the rubric of deviance. First, how are norms and rules created, and how do certain norms and rules become especially important? Second, who is subject to the rules, and how is rule breaking identified? Third, what types of sanctions, punishments or rewards, are dispensed to society's violators? And fourth, how do people who break the rules see themselves, and how do others see them? And then finally, how have sociologists attempted to explain rule-making, rule-breaking, and responses to rule-breaking? It is important to remember that when sociologists use the term deviant, they are making a social judgment, never a moral one. If a particular behavior is considered deviant, this means that it violates the values and norms of a particular group, not that it is inherently wrong or that other groups will make the same judgment. Much of the literature on deviance focuses on crime, but not only do different cultures define strikingly different behavior as criminal, they also differ in how these crimes are punished. Most serious crime in the United States today is punished by imprisonment. This method of punishment was rare until the 19th century, however, as maintaining a prison requires considerable resources. Buildings must be constructed and maintained, guards and other staff must be paid, and prisoners must be fed and clothed. For groups without these resources, incarceration is not a possibility, even assuming it would be a desirable option. Instead, there's a whole host of other techniques of punishment. For example, the Amish, a religious community whose members do without modern devices like electricity, cars, and telephones, practice meeting, which means shunning those who violate the strict norms of the group. A biblical rule instructs them not to associate with anyone who bears the name of brother if he is guilty of immorality or greed, or is an idolater, reviler, drunkard, or robber, not even to eat with such a one. In other words, the Amish believe they should not associate with rule breakers even when they come from within their own family. No one does business with, eats with, or even talks to the guilty party. The shunning is temporary, however. After a short period, the violator is expected to publicly apologize and make amends and is then welcomed back into the community. A much more permanent method of punishment is total banishment from the community. For many Native American people, the social group was so important that banishment was considered a fate worse than death. It was one of the variety of practices used to maintain social control, along with shaming songs, contests, and challenges of strength. and something of a rarity because it completely severed ties between the group and the individual. Banishment has a long history of use in all parts of the world, from British prisoners being transported to Australia to Russian dissidents being exiled to Siberia, and has been one of the most cost-effective methods of punishment ever discovered. Just as methods of punishment vary between societies and groups, they also change over time. In colonial America, for example, corporal punishment was the rule for the majority of crimes. These days, the phrase corporal punishment may conjure up images of elementary school teachers spanking students, probably because spanking was the last vestige of what was once a vast repertoire of techniques. Thieves, pickpockets, and others who would today be considered petty criminals were flogged, had their ears cropped, their noses slit, fingers or hands cut off, or were branded. These punishments were designed not only to deliver pain, but also to mark the offender. As such, the particular punishment was often designed to fit the crime. A pickpocket might have had a hand cut off. A forger might have an F branded on his forehead. Brands were also used to mark African American slaves as property during the 1800s.